Receiving incoming transmission.
Hey everybody, it's this guy here for the tch'n Report. I wanted to do a quick follow-up to the my last video about the U.S. coup that's going on in Venezuela. But before I get to that, I wanted to let you all know that since the charade is still happening, I have volunteered to be the President of the United States. You can now call me President Bob Bitchin.
Please give a big warm welcome for Bob Bitchin! Come on, let's have a hand for Bob Bitchin! Here he is all the way from Harvard, Bob Bitchin! Well, it's really great to have you on the show tonight, Bob. How you doing?
Bitchin.
In fact, why don't you be a president too? Because that's what we're all about now, right? You okay with that? Let's see what else is going on. So let's set all that fun aside. This is very important. During the final editing of this today on February 6th, it was just reported that Venezuela seized U.S. arms shipment coming into a Valencia airport. This comes just after a plea by a couple of soldiers who have defected from their duty to their country and have asked the United States for weapons. Here's what was on board. 19 rifles, 118 magazines, high-caliber ammunition, as well as 90 radios and 6 mobile phones. The shipment was sent from Miami on Friday, February 3rd. They're going to launch an investigation and see what the hell's going on. This is not good. China and Russia are both very unhappy about this. And I'd like to read you a statement from the Chinese foreign minister. He said, "We believe that Venezuela's affairs must and can only be chosen and determined by its people. And we oppose unilateral sanctions. History has taught us that external interference and sanctions, instead of helping solve problems, can only complicate matters. Sanctions on Venezuela imposed by the relevant country will adversely impact local people's well-being and should be held accountable for all the ensuing serious consequences." Meaning the United States should be held for all the starving and the migration because it's their fault, it's their sanctions. I should say our fault, our sanctions. Reading further, China will continue to advance across-the-board cooperation with Venezuela to deliver more benefits to the people in both countries. I'm not sure what they're meaning by both countries, since we're only talking about Venezuela. Could be talking about China itself. But the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, condemned the U.S. sanctions as illegitimate and cynical, pledging that his country, along with other responsible members of the global community, will do everything to support the legal government of the president. What is really bad about this situation is we are meddling in a country that has Russian and Chinese investments in it. China has billions of dollars invested in Venezuela. What this statement from the Chinese foreign minister said? Don't screw around. We're not going to put up with it. Chinese aren't inflammatory like John Bolton is. China has some diplomatic skills. Russia, in December, flew in 2 of its nuclear bombers. I wonder if they knew that the United States was going to start this coup, and we're trying to show the United States we're not going to put up with this, just like China just did. Like I said, I just got done editing this video, and this information just popped up. Well, I already knew about the Russian bombers back in December. So let's check out the rest of this video. It's very important. There's a lot of good information going on in it. There are reports out now that Venezuela has shipped the rest of their gold supplies to Russia on a mysterious plane. Ooh. We've got the court system barring Guaido from leaving the country. His bank accounts have been frozen. Guaido has issued orders to the military to not harm the Venezuelan people. That's kind of a no-brainer, right? There is something seriously going on here, and you're not going to get it from the mainstream media. Everybody I see on TV, I won't say everybody, 95% of the people on TV are pro-opposition. They want this government overthrown. They're part of the problem, not part of the solution. And you know, when the Democrats and the Republicans are on the same team, they all want the same thing. When the media is pushing the same agenda, when you have countries around the world supporting the same agenda, when you have all of that going on and streamlined and following the same narrative, you should worry. You should worry. That's the propaganda trying to convince you. This guy, Guaido, doesn't even have 20% of the population's vote. 1 in 7 of the Venezuelans have never heard of this guy. Prior to 4 or 5 weeks ago, he was nothing, a low man on the totem pole in his own party, who is not an actual party, but a collection, a collage of multiple parties. So we need to keep that kind of in mind when we hear stuff about this. You could tell exactly what country these people own by looking to see who supports the American coup in Venezuela. And what's really glaring, I don't know if you guys know what the Gilets jaunes is, the Yellow Vest movement in France that's been going on for this weekend. It'll be 12 straight weeks of violent protests. Not going to get much coverage, if any of that, on regular TV. How about Greece? Greece has been rioting for years now because the central banks and European Union, specifically Germany, has just strangled the right out of them. I mean, literally crushed the birthplace of democracy. And incredible what they did. How about the Catalonian protests? You know, there's protests going on all over the world begging for government change. But you don't hear the American empire jumping up and giving anybody support, telling these people to overthrow their government. But when it comes to Venezuela, well, that's a country who is wanting to lift the poor out of poverty. That's a country that is socialist to better the population. Not give profits to the corporations. Not allow their system to be privatized so just a few get wealthy. But you know, that aside, Venezuela has something else about it. Venezuela is one of the last few remaining countries that doesn't have a Rothschild central bank running its money system. Look at this list right here. You can see we are knocking them off one by one. The little countries, be aware. So I don't want to take up too much more time of this. Really check out the last video that I did on this. But there's an article by Dan Cohen and Max Blumenthal that just knocks it out of the park. This guy, Guaido, that is claiming to be the interim president or whatever the joke is not who you think he is. He has been schooled in the United States by a guy that was in the IMF, in charge of the Venezuelan oil back when it was privatized. This goes really deep, and you need to get yourself informed, because what I'm seeing on the TV is not what reality is. You know, it's unfortunate to have to do videos like this to point out that your country is really mucking it up. And it's really uncomfortable. But you know, the truth is the truth, whether we like it or not. You know, everyone cries about their kid getting bullied in school. while the life and creativity is being sucked right out of the kid's ear hole. But no one ever blinks an eye when our country bullies another country into doing what we demand from them. This is truly a shame, truly an American shame. Don't get me wrong, I love my country, but these hemorrhoids that have taken it over are really starting to irritate. Trump has put the same terrorists that were around for the Iran-Contra scandal and the Iraq war. John Bolton's never been to war. He never went to Vietnam. Instead, he enrolled in the National Guard and in the Yale Law School in 1970 to avoid going to Vietnam. Yet he wants to send your kids into battle to dodge bullets for his ideology, hell-bent on starting war. Every time this guy turns around, he wants war. He's a warmonger that needs to be put somewhere very far away from people with positions of power. To be nice about it, frankly. It'd be a real shame if he fell in front of a bus or slipped off the subway platform. Yeah, that would be a real American treasure lost there. But even worse than Bolton, Elliott Abrams has had the dust knocked off of him, brought back to the picture. This guy's a principal signatory in the PNAC group of terrorists. This guy's a war criminal who has abated genocidal maniacs. Abrams is a right-wing war hawk who was convicted in 1991 for lying to a Congress during the Iran-Contra scandal. Big cover-up going on. But he was later pardoned by Bush Sr. Why would the President of the United States pardon a convicted criminal? Think about who Bush Sr. is. Abrams defended Guatemalan dictator General Montt as he oversaw a campaign of mass murder and torture of the indigenous people in Guatemala back in the 80s. Montt was later convicted of genocide. It's unfortunate Abrams missed out on that. Abrams was also instrumental in the previous Venezuelan coup back in 2002 when they attempted to topple Hugo Chavez. Well, now he's right back in the driver's seat for that mess. To have Abrams and Bolton working together will lead to nothing but trouble. Their track record individually tells the future on this growing American-made crisis. This is all American-made. You guys need to understand that. If you think about it, I don't understand why you would want to pick the guy that got every answer on the test wrong and then put him in charge of teaching the class. Does that make any sense? Bolton has already ran his mouth and put the U.S. in a position to where we can't back down, lest we look weak. And he keeps pushing it with this 5,000 troop psyop. If you saw it, he had written on a notepad for everybody to see walking into the press room to give a briefing. That was intentional. That's a psyop. That goes along with the neurolinguistic programming that these people are using in these TV interviews. Very inflammatory statements being thrown around that grab you. That's propaganda. We're watching the same kind of propaganda that Hitler and Goebbels used. And I'm not even joking. I don't throw out the Nazi, the Hitler card very often. But a spade's a spade. Bolton is delusional if he thinks that 9 million Bolivarian supporters are going to roll over and accept what the U.S. is shoving down their throats. Maduro's correct with his comparison of another Vietnam if we should bring in the military. If you think for a second that changing the government is going to fix anything, you need to get yourself informed really, really fast. This situation is going downhill very fast. Remember, the U.S. does absolutely nothing for the betterment of society. There's that word, society, socialism. We knock over every socialist country, every government that wants to make their population better, healthier, less hungry, better educated. We gonna knock them over. Why is that? We are doing this for corporate profits. I'm sorry. I mean, to protect American interests. That's what we're doing in Venezuela. You know, the Venezuelans are in this position due to the crippling U.S. sanctions that takes away the money the government uses to feed the population. That is ridiculous. Of course they're going to migrate. They're all frickin' starving thanks to the United States. These are undeniable facts. It's very uncomfortable to point this out about my own government. We have caused the problem, and we are blaming it on the victim. The next thing that's getting ready to happen, I guarantee it, we are going to start to starve the military. We're going to make it very hard for Maduro to pay the military. And then, at the same time, we'll promise them a meal if they change their loyalty. But Maduro is going to keep the military support lest that happens, because it's treason for a Venezuelan soldier to support a coup d'etat. That's why we'll screw around like this, to make sure he can't pay his military, to keep his military fed. That's how they'll change their loyalty. You know, do you think Trump really knows what he's doing? Does he know who Bolton and Abrams are? Does he know the information I just told you? Did you know what I just told you? This is the kind of shit that will not make America great again. He ran on a platform of not intervening. Yet here we are. My opinion is that Trump doesn't really know enough about geopolitical politics, geopolitical affairs, to make the right decisions. And he relies on people he thinks put America's best interest first. Trump has hung the burning tire around his own neck on this one. We are in deep water, my friends. This is not going to turn out good at all. It reminds me of this phrase, order up chaos, order out of chaos. Seems we have a lot of chaos going on, and this is just another aspect of it. I wonder if that has anything to do with White O being a Freemason. Maybe these guys are all Freemasons. They're a part of the clique. You have to be a part of the secret in order to get into the club. That's the way it works. These people are all interconnected. You want to know why Kim Jong-un is denuclearizing his country? Things are not what we think they are. There is a lot going on under our nose. So I'll leave you right there with those thoughts. Let that marinate for a little while. Don't make rash decisions. Think about what I just said. Head over to Consortium News. Check out Dan Cohen, Max Blumenthal's article. Learn what this guy who's overthrowing his government, where he got himself educated from. Pay attention. World War III is knocking on our door. For the Bitchin' Report, I'm this guy here, bringing you the information you need to be an informed human being. Stay safe, everybody.